Hi, and welcome to Module 2, Sherman Alexie and Modern Native American Literature. In this module, we'll discuss one of my personal favorite writers, Mr. Sherman Alexie. He's one of the writers I sometimes call my desert island read. And I come to it from this angle. If you were trapped on a desert island and you only had one book to read, what would it be? Well, it's hard for me to answer, and I'd hate to have to decide. I'd probably hate to be on a desert island more than that, but anyway. I think I'd probably bring a collection of Sherman Alexie's short stories with me. In fact, I have a couple of them handy right here. Here's one of his more recent books, The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian, War Dances, 10 Little Indians, and this gem, which you're reading right now, The Lone Ranger and Tonto Fist Fight in Heaven. He has a number of other collections, but these, I'd be happy with any of these books. I just read and reread them, just like I quite often do. Now, I'll give you one little personal anecdote about Sherman Alexie and me, in fact. Once when I was on a 3-day bus trip, something I wouldn't recommend, I passed through Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Knowing that Sherman Alexie was Coeur d'Alene Indian, when the bus pulled into the station, I decided to jump off and see if I could look him up in the phone book and call him on the payphone. And if you don't know what either of those two things are, then you might have to go to a museum and find out what they are. But anyway, to my surprise, I found an S. Alexie listed. I called, but a woman's voice was on the answer machine. I wasn't sure if it was him or not, so I left a semi-coherent and rambling message. And remember that I had been on the bus for 3 days at this point. I can't remember what I said, but I do remember saying that if he should come to Pensacola, he should definitely look me up because he has a fan here. Evidently, I scared him off because he's never been here, but I'll just leave that speculation. About his writing, which is probably a little more important. What I appreciate so much is that within the span of one story, Alexie covers a lot of ground. Like most authors, he writes from his experience. His first major work, The Lone Ranger and Tonto Fist Fight in Heaven, is filled with experiences living on the Coeur d'Alene Indian Reservation near Spokane, Washington. And I should clarify that too, that The Lone Ranger and Tonto Fist Fight in Heaven is his first major work, but he had a couple other works right beforehand, poetry and another work. But anyway. From the beginning to the end, he can discuss subjects as large as historical representation and identity, and tie these in seamlessly into a story about the breakup of his parents' relationship and his father's absence. Furthermore, he leaves nothing out. He lets you into his world to show you the beauty and humor, while also letting you wallow in the heartache and misery without it ever feeling overwhelming. For the hours you'll spend reading Alexie, you'll have the unique experience of living, at least vicariously, in Alexie's world of alcoholism, diabetes, poverty, but you'll also see Alexie's intense awareness of his identity, keen insight into history, strong observations about the family, and his intense love for humanity. And I'll also add that many people say that this is a fairly good representation of what it's like to live on a Native American reservation in the United States. And each reservation, too, just like every one of the nations, is very different. They have their own cultures, have their own styles, have their own histories. So don't take his as a universal experience by any means. And he would not say that as well. But this is certainly representative of many experiences. Now, Alexie's perspective examines what it means to be a Native American in the modern era, which is important considering a century earlier, many writers discussed Native Americans as if they were disappearing from the earth. As with much of the story of Native Americans, this is a story of survival. Though Alexie is the first to admit that he doesn't speak for anybody but himself, his writing is also a testament to survival. To me, this is one of the main reasons we write, to say that we were here. Alexie's writing does exactly that. And just as Homer's stories from thousands of years ago documented the struggles of the ancient Greeks, I see Alexie's stories in the same light, a documentation of existence, and not just for Native Americans, but for humanity. What we see in his writing is humanity at its best, observant, reflective, critical, and loving. As you move through these intense stories, relish the beauty within Alexie's writing and take notes. Pay attention to common themes you see arise throughout the works. Family, addiction, war, history, friendship, love, etc. Watch the interviews of Alexie as well that I've placed on e-learning. Many scholars argue that as much of his work is autobiographical, his interviews also have a literary element, which shouldn't be disregarded. You may or may not agree with him on every level, but few can argue with his honesty and humility. At any rate, the interviews are a good place to see the author at work. Lastly, Enjoy the film Smoke Signals. This film is drawn together from a number of stories in the work you're reading right now. Most notably, This Is What It Means to Say Phoenix, Arizona, one of his most famous and most anthologized stories. The film is also unique because Alexie had a major role in writing the screenplay and the production of the film itself, which was one of the only films to be made with an almost entirely Native American crew, including the actors, most notably Adam Beach, who you might recognize from Law & Order, I think, SVU, and tons of other movies. I think you'll enjoy the film, and I know you'll enjoy the readings. As always, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask. I'm here to help. And happy readings!